Hello everybody, I am Lady Sylvine and welcome to my Realm of Purpose. Today's video is a breakdown of the most recent trailer for Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It's finally here. Dragon Age: The Veilguard is now officially coming to us October 31st. A blessed Halloween release. Shout out to all of you who have young children you need to take on rounds. We salute you. Before we begin with the breakdown of the release trailer, I want to let you guys know that there will be spoilers for a bunch of things. Of course, it's a breakdown. I'll be referring to other Dragon Age media, previous games, as well as what I think is late game spoilers for Veilguard. If you don't want to encounter these types of spoilers, and to go into the new game with a clear head, you should probably skip this video. It's totally cool. Now let's dive right into this. The trailer opens with what appears to be the event immediately after the gameplay reveal. As was mentioned in the Game of 4 article, Rook awakens in the Fade, specifically the prison for the Evanuris. Whether this was the old prison that was failing or a new one yet to be completed is unclear, but I would bet it's the new one because there doesn't yet seem to be any signs of the other gods being there, and I am of the belief and hope that the others are still alive somewhere, presumably in the old prison, because I want to know what their deal is besides what we heard from Solus in a couple of obscure codex entries. To back that up, let me present the following. While the Game Informer article mentions that Solus was moving specifically Gillinan and Elgornan, I don't believe this is actually the case, since they got a couple of things in their article a bit wrong. For example, they mentioned the lighthouse existing in the Fade when it technically exists in a little pocket reality like the Crossroads, which isn't really the Fade. I believe Solus was moving all of the gods to a new prison, and Gillinan and Elgornan were the ones that happened to get out. Why, you ask? Because only their statues were destroyed when Rook interrupts the ritual, at least what we were shown. That's one hell of a coincidence if they were the only two left. Like, wow. Of all the gods to release, it was the ones that were left. Additionally, I want to point out the order of the heads, because it's changed from the earlier order in the trailers, and that honestly messed with my identity mapping when the gameplay reveal came out. Moonhead and Circlehead were here previously, and now they are both here. They moved them, and I don't know why, and it's messing with me, and I don't know if it's a conscious choice because XYZ reason, or they just happen to move them. There are 3 statues of Elgornan, but 2 of all the others. Does that mean Elgornan was more powerful and needed an extra layer of magical saran wrap to keep him imprisoned? This is my evidence, and I offer up to the old gods as a sacrifice. May they look mercifully upon me. The scene starts with Rook limping in this black and white environment, holding their tummy. We hear Solus overhead giving us a stern lecture about what happened with the ritual. This implies to me that we may get a chance to walk around in this area in a, fixed path, if it's not an explicit cutscene. This really could play into Solus being an ancient dreamer having perfect control over this environment, which we haven't really seen yet in the series, particularly with someone he doesn't like or is actively hostile towards. I would just really like to see why Solus is called the Dreadwolf and the Bringer of Nightmares, and this game feels like the perfect opportunity to showcase that. Bonus points if in this scene we walk around and catch glimpses of large wolf-like shadows, or the vague hint of eyes watching us in the darkness, kind of like how we saw in the Descent DLC. I want to feel Solus's anger, the horror of a being with such a terrible reputation in an environment he has mastery over. In this first scene, Solus appears to 100% put the blame on Rook, and yes, he's ignoring his own mistakes and oversights. We don't have the full picture yet of the whats and whys and hows of Solus's plans, so I am willing to take a telling. Bear in mind also that these games are built upon the foundations of an oopsie. In Origins, the architect accidentally awoke and tainted an old god, kickstarting the events of the first game. In Dragon Age 2, Hawk and Varric accidentally find Red Lyrium and bring it back to the surface, leading to the events of the rest of the series. And in Inquisition, Solus gave Corypheus the power to crack open heaven, not realising the guy might actually succeed. And now it's Rick's turn to pull a world-shaking oopsie. Don't worry buddy, it's a rite of passage at this point, it happens to everybody. The shot is also just gorgeous, and I really can't emphasize enough how much BioWare seems to have mastered lighting at this point. I can't wait to see the storyboards for this in the new art book. The shot itself showcases several things. 1. Solas and Rook. Solas stands over Rook at a higher vantage point, with a lot more room to move around, whilst Rook is lower on a smaller plinth. So if they choose to back away, they're probably just going to fall off this thing. Solas here is demonstrating his power and superiority he feels over Rook. He wants them to feel cornered and powerless. He's literally having them have to look up at him and stay there. And that's a side of Solas we haven't quite seen yet, so that's going to be exciting. 2. We see remnants of elven architecture in the background, specifically off to the right. This could imply that this is the Black City, perhaps, but it's at this time unclear, though the blight-looking tendrils around add to the implication that this area is blighted in some way, though the tendrils do look petrified because they don't move. 3. The god statues and their placement. This part could just mean nothing, but it's worth pointing out, I feel. We see all 7 of the god statues on screen, but Sunhead and Triad on the left look like they're facing us, not towards the centre of the screen where this meeting between Solas and Rook is happening. It's one of those moments where if you notice, it's kind of like seeing a character not looking at the scene that's happening, they're having a meta moment staring at us, the players, and that always creeped me out. And yeah, it's a little bit creepy, and I wonder if it's purposeful or not. My personal opinion is that Sunhead and Triad are Soleil's and Falandin respectively, but who actually knows? What does it mean? Random placement? Intentional? What do you think? We then see a shot of Solas's face in a different lighting to how we saw in the gameplay reveal, and it appears as if we can see his pores and freckles, the creases in his lips, and the smoothness of the facial textures before looks as if it may have just been because of extreme lighting. This here just looks gorgeous. To add to this, we see a shot later on of Harding's face, and my jaw dropped at how good it looked. It really does look like the close-ups on faces in this game are going to be beautiful and emotional, and yeah, I think it just looks gorgeous, and I think that's something we should all be really excited for, specifically, beyond all the plot and wow, dragons, wow, Dreadwolf, what's gonna happen? Lore implications, amazing story. No, look at the animation. Look at what they've done. It looks so beautiful. I'm done. I'm done fangirling for a moment. A last thing before we move on is this idea I have about this area. Either it is the Black City or a recreation of it, or this is actually the Void, as mentioned in several codex entries. It's unlike the Fade and the Crossroads as we've seen it before. Yeah, there's something off about it that we haven't really seen before. It's quite unlike the Fade and the Crossroads, which usually have at least some prominent colour. This place is black and white for the most part. It looks like it's drained of magic and emotion. It feels very stale. As well as that, what if Solas was moving the Evanurs to the prison of the Forgotten Ones? Food for thought. We hear Morrigan voicing over in the trailer, and later we see her appear with a new design. Firstly, the way she speaks about the gods, while this could just be a trailer line, implies to me that she is in the know about the Evanurs, and I can't imagine her playing a part in the game if she is living in a blissfully unaware land. That's not really Morrigan. With the events of Inquisition, though there were vastly different outcomes and circumstances based around player choice, we ultimately discovered that Flemeth, Morrigan's mother, was a host for the remnant of Mythal, the elven goddess of justice who was murdered by the other gods. At the end of Inquisition, Flemeth was killed by Solas, who absorbed some kind of power from her. Not before Flemeth pushed some other kind of power through an Illuvian, presumably without Solas being aware of it, but I could be wrong in that matter. He didn't seem to be noticing that too much, he was too busy being upset, so yeah. I believe she pushed through the remnant of Mythal left in her, to prevent Solas from getting it, and so it could pass on to Morrigan, so Mythal could fulfill whatever her goal is in the series. I just always got the impression that Solas and Mythal, their goals in the series do not align, and I think Flemeth was trying to protect what was left of Mythal so that Solas wasn't using it for his own design. I believe they showed us that scene on purpose. It's gotta mean something, it's gotta come to some kind of outcome. In regards to Morrigan's new design, she appears to have the headdress similar to that which Flemeth wore, implying that she has found the Remnant and has taken over this role as the host of Mythal and the Witch of the Wilds. In saying that, I do believe this is still the same Morrigan we know and love, as I believe Mythal is in there somewhere, but she's not the one that's actually in charge of things. Though I suppose this depends on how the Well of Sorrow's choice plays out for each character's playthrough. If Morrigan drank, she is subject to the will of Mythal and must obey that will. However, if Inquisitor drank, the same applies to them. And we know that the Inquisitor will appear in the game, so I feel the choice of the will be very interesting, consequentially. I can't really say how that's going to turn out. In saying this, there is a little bit of evidence to support Solas being the one with the Remnant of Mythal. As it stands, I don't think this is the case, but I think it's worth bringing up. Gator shared on Twitter the original plan for how the Well of Sorrow's choice would play out, and it looks like the original plan was for Solas to be the one able to control whoever drank from the well after taking the Remnant of Mythal from Flemeth. Take that however you will. I believe they went with Morrigan getting the Remnant instead of Solas, since that post-credit scene shows Solas outright killing Flemeth and her giving it all willingly, instead of the original planned fight. Additionally, the Kieran situation. Morrigan's son, Kieran, if he exists, will now be in his early 20s. Our baby boy is now a baby man. And fun fact, child Kieran was voiced by Claudia Black's real son, and that's just precious to me. He did an amazing job, and I wonder if he'll come back to reprise this role. With that in mind, will the old god baby situation get brought up? Will that affect anything at all? Let's hope for answers. The next section we see Antiva, what is most likely Treviso, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, as was shown in the previous trailers. We see fire, smoke, and what looks to be those blight pustules or mounds with tentacles growing out of them in the streets. So it's safe to assume the blight has reached Antiva, confirmed as we see Gillinan coiling over the city atop a statue. It's interesting that Gillinan went southeast towards Rialto Bay. Perhaps this was once Gillinan's land or domain in the time of Elvenan. It'd be fitting, given that the area is famous for its port trade, and Gillinan is known for her association with the sea. For context, Treviso has been taken over and is, as of the start of Veilguard, being occupied by the Qun. So I would love to see the Qun's reaction to the Elven gods, the Blight actively messing with their takeover of the south. It'd be curious to see how they actually tackle this. Will they attempt to ally with the South as they did in Inquisition? Or will they try and handle it themselves? What I ideally want to see is the Qun protecting what is now their territory, meaning we see them fight with true justification, rather than taking over a place by force, as we've seen them do in the previous series. Will that lead to us seeing the Qun actively protecting what it now views as its people? If so, does that mean we'll see the Qun in a more sympathetic light? Will we get the choice to side with them at some point? Because I can easily see them fighting the gods, and we could honestly really use the allies. Imagine for a moment the full scale of the Qun's army coming south, and seeing Sten, who is now the Arashok, aiding the fight against the gods, as he did with the Warden during the First Blight. That is if he lived in your playthrough. As well as the logical conclusion of their being refugees from the gods' takeover and destruction. Will they escape into other nations? Will the other nations even take them in? Especially if they're bringing the Blight with them. Will the other nations even believe what's happening? Will they take this as an opportunity to go back and retake their land if the Qun is falling to the gods? Will we have to kill the innocents who have become blighted? Or have turned to actively worshipping or following the gods for fear of losing their lives? Will there be further consequences of the people's different reactions to all of this? There's just so much story potential and a lot that could happen. Next we see a shot that highlights just how Dragon Age Origins Day this game is going to be. This is just gory body horror and I feel sick looking at it, but I can't look away either. A great few people have come to the same conclusion that this is possibly Fisan. And that's just kind of interesting, and also kind of funny, being one of those people who gets that vibe from this person shown here. For those of you not in the know, Fisan is one of the most beloved characters from the media outside the games. He's featured in The Masked Empire by Trick Weeks. There are references to him in Inquisition as well as into Winter Nights. A lot of people speculate that he will return in this game, though there's a lot of contention surrounding that idea, since, spoiler from the book's ending, Fisan was revealed to be an agent of Solus, and Solus killed him at the end. However, Fisan was a Dreamer Mage, and if killed in the Fade, Dreamer Mages awake, tranquil, not dead. So there is a slim, but very real possibility that Fisan is alive and could come back. I'm of the personal belief that he is still alive, because what a waste of one of the most interesting and beloved characters if he's just gone. Now, this character on screen looks somewhat similar to how Fisan's been depicted in the past, leading to people saying, is that Fisan? I have my doubts, honestly, because one, in this trailer, why is he just put here of all places? Because this would be a pretty big reveal, I feel like, if Fisan was alive and he was in the game. It's just a very weird place for him to turn up. And two, this character has no Vallaslin, whilst Fisan does. I do think, though, since we are shown this person, they will have some kind of specific importance in the plot, whether it be for a specific quest, or it's a character we've met earlier on. I feel like they will have some kind of importance. I would care more about the shot this scene seems to be trying to depict if I knew who this was happening to. Especially since the scene seems to single this person out, is what I want to get across. I did notice that their eyes look like they're bleeding. Not their head, it looks like it's their eyes. Which instantly reminds me of what happened to one of the wardens in the Winter Nights short story, The Horror of Hormak, in which they tore out their eyes after witnessing what occurred in one of Gillilan's underground monster factories. And as that story told us, there are still 11 more of those out there, so there is a possibility that this scene occurs inside one of those remaining labs, and we are going to see some pretty messed up stuff. There's been several instances in these trailers that reveal Rook with not 2, but 3 companions with them during cutscenes. And that's just interesting because we were told we would only be allowed to bring 2 companions out with us when we explore and do missions. I speculate that we meet them doing their own thing out in the world, as we've been told that that's something that can happen, and choose to have them tag along with our 2 main companions as just a nice little extra on missions. Or more than 2 come along for big quests. Next, we see a scene that has given me the biggest headache trying to piece together the last few days. Like, I have gone through so many different ideas with it, and I'm at a stage where I'm happy with what I've come to the conclusion of. So, the scene takes place in a snowy, cold area, which in parts of the trailer appears to be occupied by wardens, as we see them in the next cut with griffin symbol shields. My guess is this is the Anderfels, either near Weishaupt or somewhere in the High Reaches. From the structures we see in the background and the general layout of the area, this is the place where we see the 2 dragons from later on in the trailer, which have been dubbed red and blue. So in this shot we see the wardens coming for Gil, and in the bottom right we see a dead dragon. I presume the dead dragon is either red or blue, but I believe it to be red, as the way in which Gillilan is placed on the edge of the cliff is similar to this shot, along with the tendrils hanging down from the necks of the dragons, as well as Bellara's comment synced to the appearance of blue, our gods. I think it's fair to say that these 2 dragons are some form of embodiment of the elven gods. I think blue is 100% Gil in some way, being cornered, with red dead below. And either red was Elgurnan, or Gil as well. So perhaps she was 2 dragons at once, because she looks like a fusion of more than one person. I don't have a better explanation than that, sorry. I get that vibe that she's split into 2 dragons when she turns into a dragon, and yeah, I know that doesn't make sense, but yeah. Some people do speculate these 2 dragons are the 2 remaining old gods, but I genuinely think it's very unlikely, for the reasons I just mentioned, as well as the trailer shows one of them dead and the other one getting backed into a corner. It just feels so anticlimactic for something that is so significant. The last 2 old gods just get killed in the trailer? No, sorry, I can't see it. I just don't think they would do that. Next shot, we see Elganan come in and save Gil, which is curious because the assumption that I had was that these two had separate agendas and were working on their own. But Elganan came and saved Gil, which is just interesting because of his character. Gil, additionally, has been pinned by a bolt, one that looks similar to the one we see being carried at a different point in the trailer, when we hear Tash's voice for the first time talking about taking down a dragon. Gil also appears to have her second pair of arms gripping at the bolt impaling her. It looks a lot like Solas's idol, I'm gonna say, but I don't know if that's intentional or if that means anything. But it makes me wonder what Solas's relationship was to Gil-Anan, because it's clear that they had some kind of relation. Elganan appears with his magical anime girl entrance. Gil turns her head to look at him, and it just gives me such a she didn't expect him to come and save her kind of vibe, because she looks like she's in trouble here, like real trouble, since the wardens get so close while she's pinned down and she does nothing about it, magically. It makes me think Gil-Anan's going to get a more sympathetic narrative, like someone who's lost their way, because it seems she doesn't know how to actually handle herself in a real fight, because, like, this entire trailer showed her getting taken down, it feels, and it's kind of sad to watch? I don't know. Then Elganan comes in right beside her and saves her with a mind blast, forcing all the wardens back. I think it falls in line with his character to protect her, from what the lore tells us about him. Although I imagine he immediately starts killing everyone there, instead of helping her out of the situation, but that's kind of more his style actually. The scene just comes across as this destruction of Haven or Here Lies the Abyss kind of quest in the game, where we win some kind of small victory, but the enemies are still on the loose once it's over. It's not really a victory. I want to end this on how interesting it is, the dichotomy between Elganan and Gil-Anan. Elganan is the Allfather, a symbol of vengeance, fatherhood, and masculine power. He's also the first among the gods, a god who was born into godhood and won his place through violence. Whereas Gil-Anan is the mother of the Hala, a symbol of guidance, creation, feminine beauty, and grace. She is the youngest of the gods, and was granted godhood through deed and favour from the other gods. It was so fascinating to see that these two were the ones that got brought back, because in many ways they are opposites of one another. Masculine and feminine, destruction and creation, the oldest god and the youngest. I wonder how much the narrative will touch on this. This trailer shows us several characters that are featured in the books and comics. First, we see what looks like Ivka Ivo, a dwarven grey warden who's featured in the Missing comic, a short story called Won't Know When, as well as the Tevinter short story Hunger. She's featured alongside her elven grey warden companion, Antoine, so I suspect we'll be seeing him as well. The two are actually married, by the way, or at least they're engaged. It's super cute. We also see later in the trailer, Viago and Andaratea, or Tea for short. These two are Antivan crows. Actually, they're really high up in the hierarchy. They appear in the comic Deception, as well as The Missing, and the Tevinter short story 8 Little Talons. These two are also in a romantic relationship. We also see what could be Myrna and Audric, from the Tevinter short story Down Among the Dead Men. They are part of the Morn Watch, and I won't spoil anything if you don't know. It's really good. Also, we see who I believe to be Irulan, a Dalish shapeshifter mage who appears in the Missing comic, the short story Ruins of Reality, as well as the Tevinter short story Free Trees to Midnight. Also, I'm really hoping we meet other characters from the extended media in the game, particularly characters like Vea, Fisan, and Hollix. They're among my favourites. I think there's a pretty good chance of it, considering how many are featured in the trailers alone. In addition to this, I'd love to see returning characters from the games as well. I kind of expect it. We get a shot of Minrathous, and while there are still fires in the background, we see the big rift besides the circle close. So I'd guess interrupting the ritual is undoing the tearing of rifts. That, or perhaps Tevinter is healing them. We also get a sight of a crack of thunder, and for reference, Elgranan has been called Wrath and Thunder. So I feel like this is symbolic of, we fixed Solus's problem, now there's this problem. An out of the frying pan and into the fire kind of situation. We get a nice shot of inside the lighthouse, as well as a look at the casual clothes that in the fandom are referred to as PJs. Then of course, the alluvion. And if you notice, we see some purple looking things on the sides. These match the appearance of the prism Bellara was messing around with later in the trailer. So presumably this is tied to the use of the alluvion. Perhaps it's the thing keeping it active, or locks it in case something or someone at some point in the game turns up to try and attack the lighthouse, or sneak in. Also, that's a pretty big alluvion. I wonder if something really big, like a giant wolf or something, could fit through it, huh? Our group steps through the alluvion into the Aran Forest, in the same location as when we first visit the ritual site. Look, you can actually see it in the background. I want to also point out this dapper boy over here. We have a new Fen'Harel statue in the series, which is exciting for us lore fanatics and Solus fanatics. This scene seems to show us pretty much how travel will work in the game. We use the alluvion and maybe find new alluvions to go to new locations. It could be interesting to hunt down new alluvions to reach certain areas, before the game allows us to go off-road and explore an area outside of main quests. I think that would be really fun. We get another beautiful shot, this time of the Anderfels. You can see little cacti and stuff in the background. And I feel like we're going to get some really magnificent shots in the game, like wallpaper worthy. And personally, I can't wait to get in there with Flycam. And creators willing, there's going to be a photo mode. I'd like to briefly talk about the weird circle plinths, because they're weird. First of all, they've always reminded me of the Falandin statues, the ones with the owls gripping the circle with their talons. That could mean literally nothing, but I want to point it out because it's the first thing I thought of. Haha. As for what they are and what they're used for, I don't know. But it looks like needles that Fred is meant to weave through, but for magic. That's just a theory, but I can easily see this being a bring this power source over a vast distance, or make a magical electric fence situation happening, since it looks like they're lined up and following a road or something. We see a little girl running behind Davrin, with Rook in the back. There's no confirmation on who she is, but I do have several thoughts and feelings on it. One, this little girl is in the middle of danger and smiling. If she is permanent or reoccurring, my Rook is 100% adopting her as her older sister. Two, I get the impression that since there are no other children in this scene, and I can't imagine there being many children in this game, that this is Davrin's little sister, or perhaps his daughter. I think sister is more likely, however, since Davrin doesn't look old enough to have a child this old. They're also both wearing blue, which is kind of a connection between them, and I think Davrin protecting his little sister is just a really sweet concept to add to his character, because I don't think we've really seen that yet from a companion in the series. 3. I'm scared that BioWare is going to kill off this child, because Davrin's going to have a connection with a griffin, not a child, that I think they would want to focus in on more, which could take away the relationship with his sister, possible daughter. Plus, writing-wise, it's what I would do. This kid is getting dangerously close to Darkspawn and their blood, and since Davrin has a connection with this griffin, I wonder if that is impacted by his desire to protect something precious in a way that he was unable to do with someone he loved. And we're witness to that. The opportunity for drama and tragedy is pretty high. Not to mention that there's 2 shots of Azan around this, but we don't really see the little girl again. Let me know what you guys think, because I'm horrified by the possibilities, but I really hope it's something pleasant. Asan has a really beautiful design, and we can indeed pet and hug him in the game, which is I'm so excited for. He definitely has a Crooked Tail look about him. For reference, Crooked Tail was the griffin that Garahil, the hero of the Fourth Blight, rode. That event occurs in the book Last Flight. What I really want to point out is this shot, and the sheer feral excitement it has charged in me, and I hope I am correct. I hope in my heart of hearts that I am correct. Firstly, Fisan tackles this crazy looking humanoid creature. Secondly, let me zoom in on this. Are those baby griffins in those cages? I believe they are full-heartedly. I've put it for Photoshop and highlighted it a bit, but you can see that they have 4 legs and a cat-like body, and a beak. Not to mention fun ear feathers. If I am wrong, I will cry, but I am so certain of this that we're gonna see a bunch of baby griffins. I haven't the faintest idea why they are in cages, or what this creature Fisan attacks is, but it's something to ponder, certainly. Like, are these younger siblings of Fisan? Cousins? Or is Fisan older than we think and these are his babies? I'm presuming that the wardens are doing an excellent breeding program to get the numbers of griffins up. What if we take baby griffins back to the lighthouse to protect them from the spreading blight? There are so many possibilities. Imagine if we have an army of griffins at the end of the game for the big fight. What if our rook gets to bond with a griffin? Like a baby one? Do not get me started. I will go on forever about this. We get a lovely shot underwater of some elven ruins. Not too deep since we see light coming from the surface, and in the background there is a Hala statue. I haven't much to say beyond the fact that the structures aren't covered in coral or facing any natural wear and tear you'd expect from things stuck underwater for who knows how long. It's just weird that there are not creatures building an ecosystem or covering the walls and statues. So either it's an oversight design-wise, this hasn't been underwater for that long, or it's protected magically. Lucanus appears and surprise attacks someone from behind in what looks like some kind of ritual, perhaps using blood magic or red lyrium, though I can say definitely that these are Venatori. I get the impression that this scene is where we see Lucanus's wings for the first time in the game, since we see Rook and Davrin look at him at the end like, oh, okay, cool dude with wings, nice. I also think Lucanus was trapped in the big block of ice, the way the scene plays out, and he gets out by busting out his purple wings, so that'll be pretty cool to see how this goes. We finally get a look at Lace Harding using the magic mentioned in her bio. In this trailer we see her use 2 abilities, Petrify and a Stone Wall. Firstly, it looks like Lacey has suffered some permanent or long-term damage, as there's been a few different scenes where we see red blotches on her face, which makes me wonder if this is because of the ritual. Perhaps whoever we take to bring down the pillars gets these prominent scars on their face the rest of the game. Secondly, Harding's face and arm light up blue, as if it's her very veins that are being charged with magic, which implies this is something within her that's doing this. We've seen a similar thing happen with characters like Anders being possessed by Justice. Not to say that Lace is possessed, but it's not the first time that a character got surprise abilities after being aided and or possessed by a spirit. It's also very possible that Lace is connected to magic because of the Titans somehow, as we've seen a dwarf perform magic on 2 other occasions that I can recall. Sandal, who could petrify Darkspawn, and Volta, who directly connected with a Titan during the Descent DLC. Both are valid reasons for her newfound abilities, but we'll have to see more to figure out what's actually happened to her. And I do want to point out how amazing the voice acting was in this scene, because I feel very protective of Lacey here. My maternal instincts kicked in when she says, "What's happening to me? I just want to give her a hug. I must protect her at all costs," and I think everyone feels the same way. When she petrifies the 2 Darkspawn, they don't completely freeze. They do keep moving until the shot cuts away. Either they aren't 100% petrified, it's a quick / temporary ability that'll wear off, or the camera just cut away too soon. Later we see her create a wall of stone. This time the magic looks like it is done on purpose, and this shot of her face, like I said earlier, made my jaw drop, and it's just so beautiful. The takeaway is that Lacey gets magic, and it looks like she'll slowly learn to control it through the game. I want to see the end result of that. I think the potential for how awesome that'll be is just... Whoa. This piece of architecture enthralls me because it looks like the building is still working in some capacity, like someone is inside keeping the building active in a way. Possibly more ancient elves? It's also fascinating to just look at, and I wonder if this could be a shot of the Grand Senalium, mentioned in the codex concerning the gift of the Senalium from Blessed Salais to Clever Jin. That's just an impression I get. I have nothing to back that up, but it would be really great to see that codex come back and we get to know what the hell a Senalium is, BioWare. We get a good look at the Grand Necropolis, and Emmerich in this big skeleton that I've heard people joke is a Gigantamax Manfred, others questioning if this is the skeleton we get to kiss. As a fan of giant monsters, I am in full support of that. I really don't know what the deal is with the giant skeleton, beyond the impression that there are oddities and off-record possessions deep in the necropolis, and this could be one of them. Perhaps some ancient spirit, or the bones of some creature that died in the ancient era. It could also be a construct, like a golem, but crafted with necromancy. I have no clue, but it's definitely something. On its chest, however, I want to point out it looks like something is supposed to be inserted, like a sword. I get that feeling. It just looks like something is missing from its chest. I'd really love to hear what you guys think. I'm completely lost on this. Something that'll get everyone's blood pumping is the reintroduction of finisher moves, where you'll get to see Rook performing a sick takedown of enemies. I believe it happens when the enemy's health is low enough and you get a critical hit, though that's just based on what I can recall of how it worked in Origins. But yeah, I'm hyped to see all these unique animations, especially if they're all different for each class, or if they have multiples for each class. That'd be amazing. I'll never forget the first time I took down an ogre in the Tower of Ishal back in Origins, and the pure bliss of that ogre falling to the ground with my daggers embedded in its stupid chest. Ugh. Okay, guys, you have no idea how much behind the scenes this stupid knife has been freaking me out the last year. And to those I've talked to about it behind the scenes, I am so sorry for annoying you with my messages. My one brain cell thought it found a buddy and sprinted for it like a mirage in the desert, and there was nothing I could do about it. I just fwa. So I'm really sorry. Next we spot Gil lying on the ground, splayed out with the funky knife in her chest. This could be a late game spoiler for Gil's death, so yeah. It could also be a purification of her body. We could be helping her here. We could be turning her back into a normal looking elf, or curing the blight with this thing, I don't know. It could be anything. I don't think we can draw any solid conclusions about this beyond Gil goes down, and the old gal may not get back up again. I don't know. What's curious about this scene is that it looks like there's some kind of force pushing Rook and their companion back, and all I can think is, why? And how did that knife get in her chest in the first place? How? Why? And why isn't Elgornan here to save her at this point? Your guess is as good as mine. It is what it is. Okay, you guys know this part of the trailer was my favourite. With a few days to calm down after seeing my goodest boy on the screen that I've been praying for the last several years, let's jump into what we're looking at. The scene is in Minrathous, presumably late in the game, as we see tentacles and blight literally everywhere. It's all consuming at this point. This might as well be the end of the world. Hell, you know what? This might be a Doom timeline situation similar to Redcliffe. It looks horror manifest. This looks like the Doom timeline, and I think in my head I've actually just settled on the idea that we've got another Redcliffe situation happening in this scene, which makes me sad because this means that Solus may die in this scene if the big wolf is Solus, and I don't think I can handle that. First of all, the dragon is insanely huge, and similar looking to the one we saw in the earlier trailer. Its head is what interests me most, because I would presume this is Elgornan, given it's the big dragon. It seems to be the main big bad that Fen'Harel faces. But the circle between its horns is throwing me off, because that looks more like Triad than Elgornan's head, And the game's told us that Triad is Falun Din, but that'd be weird. Falun Din is my favourite of the Evanurus, but it would just be super weird for it to be him, of all the gods to turn up. Though I can easily see a situation in the game arising with, what can stop one of the gods? Another god. Brilliant! And then Solus proceeding to scream his head off like, no! Why would you do that? That's stupid! And that leads to a Doom timeline. That'd be great. Oh, can you imagine if I'm right? Ugh, it won't be, but ugh, my goodness. What I want is for the other gods, if they are still alive, to get out, because they're neat. I want ultimate chaos to happen. That is the embodiment of my next playthrough. I just want chaos everywhere. Plus, the only other thing I can think of towards this being Falun Din, again, I doubt it very much, is that Solus and Inquisition seem to have a personal vendetta against Falun Din specifically. And the guy just seems like someone you could probably manipulate into going to war with the other gods. Just saying. But it is probably Elgranan. Next, we see Rook approaching at the very bottom of the screen at the very start of where this scene starts, as well as a shadowy figure that I wouldn't say looks like Solus, as we know the wolf turns up after, but it looks like they don't have a left arm. If that is a figure and not just a random bit of rock or something, and the angle is correct, yeah, I would say this is Rook and Inquisitor approaching this big fight. And then, where Rook and a possible Inky are standing, a giant high dragon-sized wolf busts out to tackle the dragon. Yes, Solus has been confirmed to have a giant wolf form before this point in the development of the series. And given that this wolf is a giant wolf resembling how the Dread Wolf has been depicted, you know, with 6 eyes, dark fur, etc., it's safe to assume that this probably is Solus. Alleluia, alleluia. I want to point out that this might also be Rook being possessed by Solus, or taking on the Dreadwolf form, or Solus has taught us to use the giant wolf form, or we've learned it behind his back if we go the I hate you route. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks this, but if this is indeed Solus Fen'Harel in his Dreadwolf form, this is really not how I imagined the Dreadwolf looking, because it just looks like a giant wolf with mange, and I really do hope that something a little bit different is kept in his back pocket at least. It's like, sure, I want that horror of this giant Dreadwolf creature to be there, but I would also like cute fluffy wolf in his back pocket, because there have been several official art pieces of an actual fluffy wolf associated with Solus, and I want to see an actual wolf, because wolves in real life get demonized so terribly, and I just, you know, I like wolves. I'm a wolf nerd as well as a dragon nerd. In the shot, we do see that the tendrils look like they are reaching up, and a couple of things. The dragon looks like it could easily take down the wolf in one bite. Hell, it could even snap it in half if it wanted to. But the dragon doesn't look like it lands solidly, and it even turns its head away when the wolf goes for its throat, which implies to me that the dragon was caught by the tendrils and realised just as the wolf attacked and was trying to get away. I could be way off, but that's just what it looks like to me. Also, we don't actually see the wolf bite. It cuts away just before, and that worries me so much as a supporter of the wolf. Particularly if he's a big help in stopping the gods. I'm so worried. BioWare, please, grant us Solusmancers deliverance from our decade-long hell, and at least one choice tree for the game. We beg of you, please, our lords and saviors. Watch me cry for my first playthrough, guys. I'm gonna mess up everything. This same dragon is shown in a very short clip lifting itself out of some water. Where exactly I don't know, but it could be the place I called the Grand Senalium earlier. It could be where the water was shot, or who knows. But it's in water, there's elven ruins around it, and I don't know why. Maybe it's not Elgranan and it's just a random, very old great dragon that was kind of just sleeping in this body of water or something. Maybe it's some other god. I can't wait to find out. I have no idea. This thing's huge. That's all my thoughts on that. And yeah, that's about it for this breakdown. If there's something that I've missed, it's either because I didn't notice it or I had nothing meaningful to say about it. But yes, these are all my thoughts in the trailer, things I've noticed, and yeah, I would really love to know how you all feel about it, with what theories do you have, what thoughts you have, and which parts you're looking forward to seeing the most. For me, it's the wolf. It's always going to be the wolf. It was always going to be the wolf. And a bonus if my Llewellyn gets to ride atop in a Princess Mononoke cell. That is all I have for today. This has been wild. My voice is killing me after an hour of recording, and I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope I brought something meaningful to the table, and I really want to hear what you guys think of the trailer. That was a crazy trailer. I loved it so much. Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.